Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to start a new topic, the red-headed league. Okay. So what is red-headed league? You will see here. Red-headed league. So what is meant by league? League is an association or a formal group of people. Okay. एक ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल और या कोई एसोसिएशन, उसका मीनिंग है लीग, LEAGUE, लीग. ओके. Mr. Wilson's story. This is a Mr. Wilson story. Like other Sherlock Holmes stories, this story too is told by his friend Dr. Watson. Okay. Now, see. Part first of the story, Mr. Wilson story. ये Mr. Wilson की story है. Okay. Told by his friend Dr. Watson. Okay. When I called upon my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes, he was conversing with a visitor who was an elderly man with fairy red hair. When I called upon my friend, when I just called my friend, he is doing conversation with a visitor who has an elderly man, who was an elderly man with fiery red hairs. Okay, red hair, very bright in color. Fiery red means very bright in color, so very bright red hair. Holmes introduced me to the visitor. Holmes ने, Mr. Sherlock Holmes ने मुझे इंट्रोड्यूस किया विजिटर से. मिस्टर जाबेज विल्सन. Mr. Jabez Wilson. The visitor's name is Mr. Jabez Wilson. He was a pawnbroker. Holmes asked him to repeat his story for me. So Holmes ने पूछा, just repeat his story for me. He began by showing us an advertisement in a newspaper. See, in the picture, both of them were there, and he is showing the advertisement in the newspaper. उनके हाथ में newspaper है. Okay. Now, see. He began by showing us an advertisement in a newspaper. It read as follows. To the red-headed league, there is a vacancy for a member of the league, and the salary is £4 a week for nominal services. Red-headed men may apply in person on Monday. Okay. At 11 o'clock to Duncan Ross at the office of the league, 7 Fleet Street. The advertisement had appeared in newspaper 2 months ago. Mr. Wilson, assistant Vincent Spaulding, had shown it to him. Mr. Wilson liked his assistant Spaulding. He was smart, efficient, and worked for only half the normal wages. But the assistant also had his faults. Assistant normal half wages में काम करते थे, but assistant also had his faults. उनमें कुछ faults भी थे. Every now and then he left work and went down into a cellar to develop photographs. Every now and means हमेशा वो काम छोड़ के he just went down into a cellar to develop photographs. Photography was his hobby. उसकी assistant की photography hobby थी. Okay. Spaulding showed the advertisement to Mr. Wilson and explained to him that an American millionaire, Mr. Isaac Hopkins, had founded the famous Red-Headed League to help all redheads like himself. So, एडवर्टाइजमेंट उन्होंने सुनाया. अमेरिकन जो है एक मिलेनियर है अमेरिका का मिलेनियर जो है उनका नाम है मिस्टर एस हॉपकिंस had founded the famous red-headed league. उन्होंने इसका ये फाउंड की है. ओके. एंड Spalding urged Mrs. Wilson to apply for the job. उन्होंने स्पॉल्डिंग ने ही अर्ज किया, बताया कि मिस्टर विल्सन को ये जॉब के लिए अप्लाई करना चाहिए. ओके. सो द टू ऑफ देम वेंट टू द एड्रेस गिवन इन द एडवर्टाइजमेंट. इसलिए वो गए, जो एड्रेस था एडवर्टाइजमेंट में वहां गए. ओके. नाउ सी. Fleet Street was full of red-headed people. Fleet Street road पे पूरे fully there was red-headed people. Mr. Wilson thought that with so much competition he would not get a job. इतनी बड़ी competition है, so he thought that he would not get a job. He wanted to go back. मुझे वापस जाना चाहिए. But Spalding pushed through the crowd and took Mr. Wilson to the office. लेकिन स्पॉल्डिंग ने रश को पुश किया और मिस्टर विल्सन को ऑफिस तक के लेके गए. took him to the Mr. Wilson to the office. There was nothing in the office but a couple of chairs and a table. A red-headed man sat behind the table. He was Mr. Duncan Ross. इसमें सिर्फ एक आदमी बैठा था, उनका नाम था मिस्टर डनकन रॉस. रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ द रेड-हेडेड लीग. वो कौन था? रिप्रेजेंटेटिव था रेड-हेडेड लीग का. अगर he was very pleased to see Mr. Wilson. He feel very he is very happy. He was very pleased to see Mr. Wilson and announced immediately that he was well suited for the job. और immediately announce किया, happy हो गया वो उनको देख के, immediately announce किया he was well suited for this job, Mr. Wilson. He shook hands with Mr. Wilson, congratulated him, and told all other candidates to go back. Mr. Duncan Ross explained that Mr. Wilson would have to be in the office from 10 to 2. If he left the office, he would lose the job. Spalding assured Mr. Wilson that he would look after Mr. Wilson's business in his absence. So Spalding, he promised Mr. Wilson that he would promise him that he would look Mr. Wilson's business in his absence. The pay was fixed at £4 a week. So usko payment fix हुआ. Pay was fixed at £4 a week. £4 a week usko payment मिलने वाला था. And the work, said Mr. Wilson. और work क्या रहेगा? Mr. Wilson said, and the work, they'll have to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica. क्या करना था? Encyclopedia Britannica को copy out करना था. You have to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica. The pay was very good and the work was light. Mr. Wilson accepted the job and began his work the very next day. Mr. Wilson ने job accept किया, अच्छा payment था और work भी light था, इतना ज़्यादा heavy work नहीं था. That's why he accept this job. Mr. Duncan Ross was there in the office to see that Mr. Wilson did his work properly and did not leave the office. वो वहां पे ही बैठे थे मिस्टर डनकन रॉस कि मिस्टर विल्सन उनका काम अच्छे से कर ले और ऑफिस नहीं छोड़े. Okay. He will not leave the office. He told Mr. Wilson to start with the letter A. Mr. Wilson wrote diligently for 4 hours without leaving his place. अपनी जगह उन्हें छोड़ी नहीं और 4 hours 4 घंटे वो लिखते रहे. Okay. Now, Mr. Ross would drop in from time to time to see that all was right with Mr. Wilson. At 2 o'clock, he bade Mr. Wilson good day and locked the door to the office. उन्होंने उनको बाय किया and लॉक कर दिया ऑफिस को. Okay. Now, this went on day after day. ऐसे ही चलते रहा day after day. This is going on. Mr. Holmes said Mr. Wilson, and on Saturday I got my salary. Saturday आया, एक वीक का पूरा काम हो गया, so he got salary on Saturday. It was the same next week and the same the next week after. After a few days, so ये चलता रहा week after week. This is going on. But after a few days, Mr. Duncan Ross came in only once in a while. लेकिन बाद में Duncan Ross once in a while, एक बार ही आते थे. He just come once in a while. And after time, he did not come in at all. इसके बाद वो बिल्कुल नहीं आते थे. Mr. Wilson continued. 8 weeks had passed like this, and I had written about aborts, archery, etc., and hope that I might get on to B soon. So A में जितना work था, he did it, and he feels that he will get on very soon on letter B. And then suddenly the whole business came to an end. So suddenly the whole business came to an end. धीरे-धीरे end उतरा. To an end, Holmes asked, "Yes, sir. This morning I went to my work as usual at 10 o'clock, but the door was shut and locked with a little note nailed on it. It said, 'The red-headed league is dissolved.'" ये नोट वहां पे लिखा हुआ था. The red-headed league is dissolved. So this is the note was there on that office. Okay. So up to this, we are done. Now remaining portion you will see in the next period. Understood? Red-headed league. What you have to do? You have to do your homework. What is your homework? Just read the lesson. Red-headed league. Reading is very important. Go and search the hard words and their meanings. Okay, you have everything. So go and search it. Understood? So we will stop here. Go and do your homework. Read the lesson. Okay, bye.